Thanks. It's fantastic to be here. We're going to have a really exciting panel discussion about business and data following this. But I just wanted to kick it off by giving some perspective about how we think about the power of Twitter data. And because I'm a egotistical American asshole, I came up with the most US-centric example that I could think of, which is around the Library of Congress. So Twitter has a long-standing partnership with the library where we're donating all of our historical tweets. And about a year after the partnership was formed, I got a call from the chief librarian. He said, hey, can you come to DC? We're working on a really exciting project we want to share with you. And I said, well, amazingly enough, I'm in a cab. I'm on my way to DC now. But unfortunately, I arrive at like 8:30 tonight, and I speak early in the morning, and then I'm flying out. And he said, well, we're happy to meet you in the evening. And so long story short, they actually did meet me. I don't know how the government works in your country, but I was shocked to see them meet me at 8:30 at night at the library. They kept the lights on for me. And then what proceeded was one of the most magical experiences of my professional career, which is I got a 2-hour behind-the-scenes tour of the Library of Congress. And this is not like the place that the tourists go. This is like the real library that looks very much like a library with lots of books. It just happens to be the documents that represent an entire nation's history. And my favorite thing that I saw, and there were many, many incredible things that I got to hold and touch, was this thing that's on the screen. And to be clear, this was taken by me with my cell phone. I'm holding this book, which happens to be our nation's first president, George Washington's diary. And I pulled it off the shelf, and this particular document was from 1787, and George Washington is at the Constitutional Convention, and that keeps switching on me. Maybe the guy upstairs is screwing with me. He's at the Constitutional Convention, and he's writing in his diary each day about what he's experiencing at the convention. And it's very much like us all being at a convention. If you can see here, there's actually some white spaces in there, and each area of white space represents an entry in his diary. And a typical entry, and they're very readable, or something like, spent all day at the convention, had tea with Hamilton. Effectively, George Washington was tweeting at the convention. There's no mentions of his wife, Martha. He doesn't do any retweeting, but he's actually just describing what's going on in his life. And we always talk about the power of Twitter data as having unlimited value, and sometimes people will scoff at that. How can this, user-generated content have unlimited value? But one page of, this thing's just going crazy, one page of George Washington's diary is considered to be priceless. And I'm pretty sure his wife was not looking over his shoulder and going, man, that's pure gold, George. The reality is, it's only in retrospect that we can see that he was documenting very important components of our nation's history. Now, wow. The interesting part of this is that this area of the library is the manuscripts area, and it was definitely the thing that felt the most like Twitter. It was the personal archives of the people that are recording what's happening in the building of the United States. And it's enormous. I mean, it's a building that's a city block long. It's as far as you can see documents. It's 55 million archived items, and it's overwhelming to think about until you stop to think, that's 55 million documents over 300 and something years, and Twitter generates 1 billion ideas every 2 days. So in fact, as you might have foreshadowed on the screen, we're building the largest archive of human thought that has ever existed. But it's not just the size that really makes this data so interesting. It's the other components. When we think about the library example, that's told from a pretty specific viewpoint: wealthy, white, now mostly dead men. Twitter represents the views of an entire planet, and from all different socioeconomic backgrounds. It also has some of these really interesting components, like it happens to be very, very fast. So stuff happens on Twitter sometimes before it actually happens in real life. People read about an earthquake and then they feel the tremor. It also happens to be, it's not a monologue about personal papers, it's a dialogue. So it produces incredible, incredible content that is very, very unique and different. So that kind of leads to the question that we think a lot about, which is what's possible when you know what the world's thinking about any topic at any moment in time. And I want to talk about two really quick examples. So one thing you can do is you can save lives. So we actually do a lot of work with academic researchers around improving the world by providing the right data to help them solve really hard problems. And one of the problems that we're solving involves Jakarta. So Jakarta is an interesting place. There's 30 million people. 40% of the city is below sea level. There are 12 rivers that flow into Jakarta. And during monsoon season, they can have horrific flooding where more than 40% of the city is underwater. And with 30 million people, that's a real problem. And unfortunately, you know, it's also very unsafe, and there can be casualties through this process. So what we're doing with Twitter and our data is we're actually giving city officials a new lens on what's happening in the city in real time. The leading cause of death during this flooding is electrocution, and you can imagine how frightening it would be to be evacuating from your home, stepping into a pool of water, and not knowing what the outcome is going to be. Well, now we can change decisions that would take sometimes hours or days around turning off certain areas for power to minutes, because the citizens of Jakarta are telling us what's happening. There are, millions of eyewitnesses, and then we can respond and make better decisions. The second example is much more simple to understand. It's about building better products. So this particular example comes from a consumer product, over-the-counter cold medicine we've probably all taken. This cold medicine has existed for 45 years and basically has not changed. And we started working with the company to help them understand a product that they thought they understood really well. And one of the interesting things we found by studying the conversation was that there was a side effect that they did not realize they had a problem with. And that particular side effect was dizziness. And the conclusion by studying more conversations was people were overdosing. They were taking too much. So you can think about all the implications of how you can make a better product and a better experience for consumers, from packaging to formula, around what's happening in that area. So in conclusion, we think that every business decision can be better when you take Twitter data and you add it as an input, because why wouldn't you want to add in this element of what does the world think about this topic at any moment in time, at any location? And with that, I think we're having our panel.
I'll sit here. Okay. Thanks, Chris. I'm N.Carlson. I'm the Chief Correspondent for Business Insider. Thanks for having me. So why don't each of you introduce yourself? But first, I want to set the scene a little bit, which is this. So what we have here are we have seers, like people who can see into the world in a way that the rest of us can't. We have people. You have access to data about all the world's conversations. Werner here has access to not only what people are buying and doing on Amazon, what they're consuming, but also what all the business is built on Amazon Web Services. Tony Chartbeat has access to what is happening with the world's publishers. Who is visiting them, who's going to, and how long they're spending on each article, and what they're doing, and what they're reading, and what they're consuming. And Jane is at Yandex, and Yandex understands what the world is searching for. So why don't you all introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your jobs, and start with you.
Okay. So my name is J.Zavalishina, and I'm with Yandex, which you probably heard about. It's the most popular Russian search engine, and not only search engine, but actually a whole bunch of customer services. But here I represent our new initiative called Yandex Data Factory, which is basically about applying Yandex's technologies, machine learning algorithms, and data science and expertise we have from building search engine all that time to other businesses in different industries.
Tony.
Hi, my name is Tony Hale. I'm the CEO of Chartbeat, and that means my job is to take credit for my team's work. We have probably the largest data set in terms of media activity on media sites in the world. So every month we get the second-by-second, pixel-by-pixel behavior of every single person across 55 billion page views. And we can learn an awful lot from that. And what we do with that is we enable everyone from kind of editors and video producers on the front lines to try and grow audience, and people on the advertising side across both kind of on the brand side and on the publisher side, trying to understand where real value is. Where is people's attention versus where just people's clicks?
I'm W.Vogels. I'm the system administrator of a large bookshop.
Nice.
And I apologize for my voice, but there was a football game last night. Seattle Seahawks won, so thank you for that. We aim to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And it's easy to see how you do that in retail. But our cloud computing division is definitely a big division that is growing as well. And we try to be there similar customer-centric. So where in the past IT was very vendor-centric. Vendors were basically in charge. And we've tried to turn that around now in the past 8 years by allowing the consumer, the customer, to be in charge in IT, where we as vendors need to be on our toes every day. Otherwise, customers can walk away. So we've brought this major revolution about, that's called cloud computing.
Chris, we know all about you.
Yeah.
So what, having access to all this data, what is a truth about the world that the world does not know, but you do because you can see all this data? Chris, tell us something we don't know.
I mentioned at the end of the presentation, I think at the end of the day, every significant decision will have data as an input, and I think the days of gut instinct are done.
Okay, Werner, you were telling me when we were talking before that you can tell when an Amazon...
I think this is traditional Walmart story, yeah, where basically a retailer may know that you're pregnant before you know that yourself. Yeah? If at scale you know all these patterns, or the probably more well-known example is people may know that you're heading towards a divorce before you know that you actually made that decision. Yeah, and so those are scary examples. But those are sort of the larger patterns that you can get out of data.
And what about
Not that we do that. Right. You do not get an email from us, maybe you should do this divorce now instead of 6 months from now. Yeah? we don't do that. Yeah?
Dear valued Amazon customer, have you considered this divorce lawyer? Tony, what are people doing with media that you know that the rest of us don't?
Well, I think the one hopeful thing that we get from our data is that there's this perception among media that the winners online are the clickbait merchants, or the people who create crap. And when you look at the data properly, that's just not true. Quality content has a place on the web, and it can work incredibly well as long as we measure it correctly.
And so, explain a little bit more.
Well, look, if you want to think about a way in which data has truly hurt someone, you can look at the media industry. In that, if you were to look at any other industry which had grown its audience 16x, which had new ways to interact with and engage with its audience, you would go, this is a golden age for that industry. And yet, with media, it's not. It's the opposite. And the reason, quite simply, is that we don't monetize content at all. We chose for our currency the link to the content. When I click on the link, the headline, the page loads its impressions, and the monetizable act has occurred before I read the content or not. So if I were creating a completely rational economic strategy for a media company, it would be to have a page with just a really provocative headline that goes to another page with just a really provocative headline, and another page with a really provocative headline. That is the most efficient, rational strategy for this thing. But that isn't actually what anyone wants. So advertisers don't just want someone to load some assets on a page. They want someone's attention. That's what they want. And publishers, they want something which connects the quality of content with the value of the page. And users want a great experience. They want us to be optimizing for this stuff. So whilst we optimize for index fingers, we get crap. If we optimize for people's minds, we get really great content.
So is reading time a better metric then, or time spent on a page is more important metric than just the hits itself.
Certainly, if you look at, and so some of the best research teams on the planet, Microsoft Research, Yahoo Research, have done a number of kind of peer-reviewed studies on this, and they found 2 key findings. If you're looking at a brand's goal, an advertiser's goal of recall and recognition, 2 things make a difference. One, the quality of the creative. Who knew? The second is the amount of time the ad spends in front of someone's face. And so if you want to have a well-performing ad, you need to find the right audience, you need to bring them there, you need to stick that ad in front of them long enough for it to make an impact. And you know what does that? Quality content. Quality content captures someone's attention for longer than clickbait, where someone clicked on a link and goes, no, actually, this isn't anything that I want to read.
It's interesting, as the world becomes more measurable, we also open ourselves up to situations where data can lead us astray, which is sort of what you're talking about. I mean, are there any other ways that people are misusing data, misunderstanding data?
Well, that's exactly the question you shouldn't ask me, because in fact, what we do, what we focus on applying machine learning algorithms to the data. And what these algorithms do, they pretty much eliminate this part. That's something which usually one of the hardest parts to explain to the companies which are interested in our services in advanced analytics. We should start with explaining them that. Yes, we can make your, for example, marketing campaign, we can make it much better, much more precise, much more personalized, and so on. But we can't explain you why it became better, right? Because what we have is machine learning algorithm that considers thousands of factors. And for example, if we look at the ad which is placed on Yandex, and if you try to think about it in traditional marketing terms like audience segmentation, you could say that we have like 200,000 segments, right? That's something you can't explain to marketing people. You can't even name each of these segments, but they're all meaningful. It's different types of people. And when you can consider thousands of factors, you can actually take into account everything, some very odd or unobvious factors that normal analytic wouldn't think about. Like, for example, what we know in Yandex is that when we personalize the search results, one of the important factors is the speed of typing the request. That's something you won't guess just being an analyst.
Yeah, I was going to say on the misconception front, I think one of the things that we encounter time and time again, and I think the higher level you go in the organization, the more problematic this is, especially at the CEO level or the CMO level, is this idea that data is about some big silver bullet insight that is going to rationalize everything that's going to change your company, right? So, it turns out we studied all this data and all of our customers are left-handed or whatever it happens to be. And I think the real impact we see from data is not around a singular insight, it's around thousands of insights, but more importantly, thinking about how to operationalize those insights. And I think, Amazon is probably one of the best examples of really operationalizing the data in a meaningful way. An example in this area is something like inventory management. So we worked with a large retailer, and we set up geofences, virtual geofences around their stores, and we just studied the conversation. And one of the things that we found was that customers would often complain when an item was out of stock. Now, this retailer has understood their inventory for a long period of time. They know what's in stock and what's out of stock. But now they have this new lens, which is what's out of stock that customers care about, or talk about, I'm going across the street to your competition to buy. It's like a way of ranking out of stock items, and a new lens on a very old world process, a solution in theory that they solved 20 years ago, but now they have a new way of doing it. It's taking those insights and actually getting them into the inventory system and operationalizing the insights to make it different. It's not about the big aha moment.
But I do think that it's important to see that it's something that we may not have done 10 years ago is for companies to truly understand who their customers are. Yeah, I mean, there's abundance of products in the market, there's intensifying competition, there's increasing consumer choice and increasing consumer power. And a decreasing loyalty towards large brands. I mean, who here loves their bank? Or their cable company, or their mobile provider, or whatever. You really have to start to understand your customer to be able to personalize their experience, because I think personalization is key in able to reach your customer. And you not only need to do, let's say, customer segmentation in big blocks, you really need to go towards the individual to be able to deliver them a personalized service, such that, in our case, shopping, you help them to make the absolute best decision, which may be not to buy something. Yeah, and I think that's more important. I mean, customers have access to perfect information. Yeah, the idea of walled gardens, to keep them inside and trick them. I mean, the world of, say, second-hand car salesmen who only thought about making this sale and didn't care about whether customers would come back. That's not how you build businesses anymore. You want to have a long-term a long-term relationship with your customer, and the way to really do that is to personalize, and for that you need data.
I totally agree, and it's actually exactly what I meant, that when you try and aim to understand each one of your customers, you inevitably come to the necessity of, well, machine learning algorithms or some kind of technologies which are doing that for you. Because obviously having millions and millions of customers, you can't humanly understand each and every one of them. But still, if you apply the technologies properly, they will feel like you are understanding them better, caring of them better, and that's exactly what you want to achieve.
But it's not only the consumer side. If you look at the business outcomes, which is hugely complex, of course. I mean, there's a front-facing side where we run our warehouses and things like that. So machine learning, for example, plays an incredibly important role in many different areas, whether it's inventory management, whether it's setting prices for new products that you haven't sold before, or, for example, the area of fraud management. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why customers really trust Amazon is that we manage to keep them away from the bad guys. But for that, you need to have excellent algorithms to manage fraud. And it's, all of those things are data-driven. There is no human sitting there. Yes, of course, we have individual, let's say, investigators that go after fraud cases, but in first place, you want to do it in an automatic fashion.
What is the role of creativity in examining all this data? I mean, it's what are the right questions to ask, and how do you, this is a big thing.
Well, yeah, for example, in our experience, I can say that the most challenging thing for humans to do here is to find the right goals. I mean, for example, when we come to the customer and we explain how all this thing can work for their business, very often, like probably half of the time, we hear the question, okay, and what should I measure? Or which parameter should I optimize? And they say, okay, that's question we're asking to you, because that's your business. So, for example, pretty much the same service about the personalization of marketing offers. For one of our customers, strategically, what they wanted is just get more money of it, right? They know that they can only send one message to customer a month, and they want to maximize financial output. Simple. We can build a model, we can test it, we can improve it, and we can get the results which are much better than their current results. But it's not always you just want some money. Because, for example, for another customer, they feel much more strategically important, so their customers, their clients, are consuming more than 2 products from them. And this is much more important than money today. And this is a strategic decision they have to make. And this is exactly where you need to use your creativity. That's something you cannot simply delegate to machine. You can use some machine help on it too, by experimenting. But basically, this creativity is something which we need to learn how to improve. Because most of the companies who are thinking about big data and getting some advantages of it, they don't really measure much of things of their efficiency. And when we come to them and say, okay, we can make this experiment, and say, okay, how do we know that experiment is working? Guys, just by measuring, oh, we don't have this business process in place.
One of the, I think one of the traditional ways in which data people showed creativity, certainly on the kind of marketing and agency side of things, was they'd say, what do you want the data to tell you? What do you want the data to say? Brand lift goes up? OK, we'll be creative around the data. That, I think, has been changing recently, which has been good. I do think one of the points to what Werner was saying about machine learning as well, one of the big changes that we're seeing is who uses data within the enterprise as well. Okay? It used to be generally a kind of small cadre of kind of data scientists who'd be perfectly happy in terminal, doing whatever they needed to do. And now it's everyone. And not everyone is a data scientist. And so if you're, say, working with ad salespeople, not every single one of them has a degree or a background in data and can look at an Excel spreadsheet like it's poetry. And so one of the ways in which you can apply machine learning and so forth is to start saying, OK, how do I take the data and turn it into a narrative, something that they can understand, they can use immediately without having to put cognitive load on their positions? So one of the really interesting things for us about data is how do we make data speak human so that we can make them far, far better, and when they're not traditional data scientists?
I think one of the most interesting examples of this mix of creativity and data is happening in the movie industry. You know, if you look at the making of a movie from an investor standpoint, it's like the world's worst startup model. It's like money in, money in, money in. You get zero output of how the business is doing. You get zero metrics, and then one day suddenly you launch, and you know within hours or days whether you're going to get a return or not. And that's an industry that has been forced to really figure out how to weave data in. And now we're seeing it starting to really support the creative process, from everything from who to cast in the movie to really understanding the feedback from trailers to draw audience and to figure out and discover new audiences to market to. One of the film studios was recently doing a low-budget horror film, and they decided they needed to discover new audiences. So they actually looked for all the activity from people doing social activity in the crypts in Paris, and knowing that that was a natural audience for that kind of content. And they actually started marketing to this entirely new audience that they wouldn't have reached before, and feeding that back into the creative process throughout. So I think on the creative side, feeling like they're getting support for their process and feedback from their process versus trying to dictate the process.
We see this coming back on the technology side as well. So we've built a data warehouse service, so we can get the data warehouse as a service for a few hours, or that can be 1,000 nodes wide or 1 node wide. So traditionally in enterprises, data warehouse was a centralized kind of thing. It was very expensive. You would have to schedule your tasks somewhere way in front. But what we see is there's a major shift. Our data warehouse service is the fastest growing cloud service ever that we built. It's actually, some enterprises, this is the first cloud service that they're using. Because what you see is that there is a desire within business units to do more and more analytics, but they would be bogged down by the centralized data warehouse. Now they can get a data warehouse at their fingertips for a few hours on Friday afternoon if that's what they would want. And so we see a tremendous increase within, let's say, one organization that are basically running hundreds of small data warehouses now to make their business decisions. But coming back to the creative part, I want to do the infrastructure. I've seen a number of cases where traditionally intuition would be the driver of decision making. And I have a number of cases within Amazon, but I have one tremendous interesting case from one of our customers. General Electric, together with Mount Sinai Hospital, did an investigation of placement of patients in particular beds and rooms. So the normal process would be, there would be an intake room where a patient would come in, there would be these guys or women that's sitting there talking to the patient and then decide where the patient should be placed. So what GE did, they tagged all patients, they tagged all diagnostic equipment, all the workers in the hospitals, just to understand, where do patients spend most time. So where do they spend most time? In front of the elevator. Yeah, because placement is absolutely sort of historical. This is how we used to do things. And by actually going to a completely data-driven model and placing patients closer to diagnostic equipment based on their projected diagnostic, Mount Sinai Hospital was able to save $200 million while actually treating 10,000 more patients a year. And so this is going from an intuitive model to a pure data-driven model.
I believe that exactly illustrates that the best field for creativity in using the big data is basically finding new applications of these new technologies, where you can use data to achieve better results. Because there are some obvious things, like in marketing, everybody uses data-based business, right? But there are some unobvious things, like this patience placement. Or, like, for example, we just lately had a very interesting project where, well, it was about supporting huge power lines infrastructure in Siberia. So it's really long, it's thousands of kilometers, and it's really cold there, and not like we have a lot of roads there. So field inspection is unbelievably expensive, but you still need to check if everything's all right there. So what this project was, together with Accenture and the other company which produces drones, what we do is we just send drones which take pictures of the power line and whatever happens about it. Like, here tree is about to fall to the line, right, and disrupt the electricity. And you can take these pictures, you can use computer vision technologies to recognize the pictures, and immediately there are results without this long and expensive field inspection. So that's probably the biggest field for creativity now, to figure out where else we can apply our technologies to make the world better.
How do you teach clients to ask the right questions?
Slowly.
That's a good answer.
No, it is. It's often, especially machine learning. Often the cycle is you train, you set some goals, you use some algorithms, and often picking the right algorithm is just an iterative approach. There's thousands of machine learning algorithms, and sometimes you have no clue which one is the best one. So you just iterate through it.
And one of the things that we find as well is, for a lot of people, even just giving them simple kind of feedback loops is hugely important. If you can say, here, experiment, and get immediate feedback on your performance, then you can understand, and they start exploring and doing brand new things they never thought about doing. Speaking to kind of what Werner's point about replacing intuition, they can do tremendous things. And it's all very, very simple feedback loops. It's done a multitude of times. There was it came from Vietnam pilots when they were looking at their performance. The Vietnam pilots that won versus the Vietnam pilots that were less successful were ones that went through a cycle of OODA, they called it. Observe, orient, decide, act. The ones that went through the most cycles were successful, and that's what you're seeing often on the kind of front lines with data as well. The more that you can give someone data so they can observe, orient their position, make a decision and act, and go through that cycle, the faster they become. So it's a very iterative process, to Werner's point.
So
experiment, measure, learn.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a cycle. Actually, if you go back to in 1997, Jeff Bezos wrote the first letter to shareholders in Amazon, and that's a very famous paper. It's worth reading. Yeah, of course, the first item in that was we are a company for the long term. If you're a short-term investor, don't invest in Amazon. Second line in what defines the company is that we shall measure our business processes relentlessly, and we shall experiment and we shall learn from that and make that a cycle. I think you see it coming back in all other processes as well. The lean startup methodology, you bring a minimal viable product out, you measure, and you decide whether you amplify amplify or pivot. Yeah? And so these things all cycle around being able to measure and then being able to take actions on it.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I just want to end on an optimistic note. I mean, we're entering a world that is going to be more measurable. I mean, everything from the Internet of Things to wearable technology. Are you optimistic about it, and why? What does that mean? What does the more measurable world mean for people?
I'm incredibly optimistic about it, and I think we're all consumers, and I think, one reason to be incredibly optimistic is that customer experiences are just going to get better and better and better as data and machines start to help figure us out and help us save time and make better choices. I loved Werner's comment about helping customers avoid making the wrong purchases. It's a great example that our lives are going to be easier and more efficient through data.
Yeah, I'm equally tremendously optimistic, although I've seen other things which some people like and not like. So, for example, the use of big data in sports, I'm a big sports fan, is kind of annoying to me. It's teams actually go into the field already data-driven. Yeah, it's whether you do in basketball, whether you, after shooting at the rim, whether you actually try and go for the offensive rebound or actually retreat is a data-driven decision. Yeah? And one of the most extreme examples that I've seen there is that there's this research that shows that teams that are really working well on the field have their heart rate go up and down in sort of the same sequence. And a player that may not be really playing well has his heart rate out of sync with others. So what we see now is that players actually get heart rate monitors. The coach sits on the side, looks at the players who are actually yes or no in sync with each other, and you take them out. Not really what I would like to see in sports, but these are, and the things are going driven to the extreme, of course, but there are angles that may not be so positive.
So I think...
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's 2 points. I think with data, the closer that we can get the models in our brains to actual reality, the better. And that's what makes me optimistic. The one thing that I would caution with, though, is choosing the right measures and the right goals. I remember the classic example for me is in the 90s when a bunch of US hospitals decided to try and make mortality rate the key thing they wanted to reduce, which sounds like the perfect metric. It turns out that the fastest way to reduce the mortality rate was to stop admitting the sickest patients. It was to stop doing the experimental surgeries and so forth. So I'm hugely optimistic about the possibilities of data as long as we keep squarely in mind that the data must accurately reflect our goals and that these kind of unforeseen consequences can happen if we're not careful.
I'm learning from this panel that it's the right questions for data.
By the way, best way to reduce your customer service contact is to hide your telephone number. No, so there's not, so number of calls, that may not be the right metric. Yeah. Whether that's customer satisfaction or not.
Well, Jane, real quick,
I'm sure we, of course, are moving to the more measurable world, and there are two main drivers in it. First is customer expectations, because today it's already changed. When I'm abroad and my bank calls me to ask if it's my card, if it's me using my card abroad, I kind of feel irritated because I'm with my phone abroad, I have their app on my phone, why they can't check it, right? I would allow them, why they are asking questions. And that really becomes more and more typical situation. We expect somebody who provides us services to remember everything about us and be more personalized than ever. On the other hand, of course, businesses will have to be more measurable. Just as in my examples, when business don't know what exactly is it they want to optimize, they will just be less efficient than the others who are using these new technologies. And there is a myth about big data, whatever, big data solutions, of something being like something which you can plug and play, right? You just put black box inside of your business and it just improves things. No, it doesn't work this way. You need to re-engineer your business processes to make your business more measurable and data-driven, and then you can use these technologies. So I think these two factors will lead us to more measurable.
Well, thanks so much for joining me on stage. Thank you.